All right, we are back with another podcast episode. Today we have Andy Bachert. I got it right. So, Andy, you do a lot of things, and I was really excited to have you on. So, can you give me just a rundown of what you're into now, what you were into the past, and we'll get into some more deep details.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate you having me on, Brand. It's been great to be here tonight, and yeah, just I've been watching your podcast, following your company, and excited to be part of this. So, what I'm into now, I'm actually on staff at Friends in Action International. We're a nonprofit mission organization, and we support missionaries, mission organizations using construction and service projects around the world. So, kind
Hmm.
of into that now. What got me into that really was my origins out of high school was welding and fabricating, and I got a little bit of other things going on. I'm messing around with some real estate investments and things like that. But yeah, so the welding kind of got me into understanding how I can use that to help others, and here I am. So, Friends in Action, our headquarters is located in Middletown, Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and that's kind of our headquarters of the U.S. operations. We also have a office in Canada as well. So yeah.
How big are they?
So Friends in Action, we have about I would say 14 to 15 uh, full staff, and then we have
Okay.
100 volunteers. We have a couple missionaries planted out in different countries around the world too. So yeah, rather a smaller organization, but we've made a pretty big impact because we work for other organizations. So
Hmm.
we get ourselves well known by partnering with other mission organizations.
Okay. And with the metal fab portion, I'll get into more of this, but you did own your own fabrication business as well, or
Yeah, I
do.
still do.
Okay.
I've scaled that way back. I still sell some work and use subcontractors. Some good friends of mine, uh, solopreneurs, and just again love the business like I did. And I'm just yeah, just kind of playing with that a little bit. I would say probably in the last 2 years I backed off really heavy to try to focus more on the organization here. But yeah, still dabbling in it. It's one of them things where if you're passionate about it, you never want to quite give it up. I still have my shop and my rig and stuff. So
That's cool. That's funny because I always have that conversation with my COO. Always comes up, who obviously started out in the shop and then grew up through the business. But he said the hardest evolution was going from the floor, building things with his hands, to then being in the office and not building anything. He said it took him like 6 months to a year to get like through that process. So I guess it's an itch that never goes away.
well, that's where I think now with working here with friends, I still get to travel about 4 to 5 times a year. I still get to weld out in those different countries. So kind of have the best of both worlds. I have some administrative and some executive responsibilities. Plus, then also I get to toy around in the field. So
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
So, roughly 30-year career in the steel industry. So rising from apprentice to vice president and owning your own fabrication business, which we touched on. What inspired you to make such a significant leap from steel fab to full-time industry work? Because that is quite opposite realms.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I got involved back in 2002. So quite some time ago, I started volunteering with Friends in Action. My first trip was actually to Africa, and I spent 5 weeks there. I was at the time with a large local fabricator in the area, and they granted me some time off work. Got to spend 5 weeks in Africa. Never was in another country before. Never flew out of the country, so it was quite an amazing experience. And then again, to boot, I get to spend time under the hood. So how many guys can say they've welded in 10 or 15 different countries? So that was
Yeah.
my first experience, Brandon, and I just understood a little bit better that hey, I have a talent. I feel like I'm gifted to be able to do this, and kind of started thinking about what does that look like in the future. Now that was way back again, 2002, but as I developed that and learned more about the industry, I was still young, so I learned more about the industry, got more experience, more knowledge, got some more management opportunities, so I could grow that way as well. But through that, I was volunteering with the organization, just maybe 1 or 2 trips a year. And then, really, in 2021, it's really when it hit me. And I really try to make a long story short, but I was in West Africa, and this was maybe my first time we were literally like out in the bush, and it was like we were sleeping out on cots. under the stars. Like it was real. Like this was real. And it was
You're not glamping.
you're not glamping, man. Like it was honestly a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I was a little scared at first, but it was
Sure,
just cool
sure.
because it's like, this is so real. Like it's like there's no light pollution. You're out there at dark and you're hearing all these sounds, but it just became really like real surreal to me.
Mm,
And up to that point, again, I've been blessed in so many ways, and so many people have spoken into and trained me and taught me, spoken into my life. Like I look back and I just see like the progression of where I've been blessed. So at that point, I was working for a large steel fabricator um, in the Reading area, and then I was still running my business, kind of moonlighting on the side.
yeah,
And
sure.
I just felt like there was something more that I should be doing. And
Mm,
I really built my career around my identity as who I was as a welder, who I was as an
mm,
entrepreneur, who I was as a manager, and some of that I sacrificed a lot of precious things that I probably shouldn't have when it comes to family and time
yeah, sure.
spent and things like that. And it just became real. Like, wow, there's more that I've not appreciated that I should have. So I honestly, not to get too faith based or religious on you, Brandon, but
You're good.
I mean honestly, you're out there. I just started praying about it, and
Wow.
it was like whatever this looks like when I get home, maybe I'll just keep going like I'm going, but I need to have a serious conversation with my wife and really understand where this goes. So got home from that trip. That was for 2 weeks. We were in West Africa. Awesome trip, awesome experience. We were building some steel trusses to go over the well. We have a water well drilling ministry there, and basically, in the rainy season, the equipment's got to get under some type of roof system, or it gets damaged and things. So we were building this truss system, basically a garage shelter for it. So a lot of welding, a lot of fabricating, just having a great time. Got home 3 days later. At the time, I was a general manager for the company I was working for, and 3 days later, after I got back, I got let go from my job. I was
Wow.
told the company was going in a different direction, and yeah, I kind of thought the same thing in my head, and
Here's your sign.
that's funny because that's exactly how it felt, Brandon. Because I was, when you're in a situation like that, you think back and it's like, man, I could have said so many things. I could have shown so many things. I could have reacted so differently. And I think if I remember right, I just kind of like was like, oh, okay. like it. So anyway, by the end of the day, I basically had my things packed up and was heading home that night. So that night, my kids had like they were a lot younger, so they had kids ministry at church and stuff. So they get home on that night, and they're always rambunctious and crazy. My wife was working in the evenings at the time, so it just getting home that night wasn't a good time to tell my family, "Hey, I just got let go from my job."
Yeah.
So we've never experienced that. I've been blessed, to be able to be recruited into different positions. So it was all new to me what it was going to look like. So got the kids to bed, sat my wife down, and said, "Hey," I said, "I got to tell you something." I said, "I don't want you to like freak out or anything, but I feel pretty good about it. I don't know what this looks like, but I got let go from my job today." And so my wife said, that's amazing." She said,
Wow.
when you went to Africa," she said, "I was praying that something would change in our lives.
Woo.
I don't know how long we could have continued going forward like we were." And that was a real eye opener. I mean, it's like my wife and I are high school sweethearts. We never even discussed anything like that before.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I mean, not just did I get hit by getting let go from my job, I just got hit by my wife. It's like, wow, this was a reality that she lived with for a long time.
Wow.
And, but it was like, I was in Africa kind of lifting that same type of thought up, and she was here in America lifting the same type of thought up. It's like, this had to be, they say a God thing. It had to be a God thing.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. So that's how I got to, be back out on the market. So I told her, I said, "Listen," I said, "I'm going to really vamp up back up to my business. We're going to get started. We're going to get work going, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens." So, kid you not, probably 3 or 4 days after some people found out, I took my moonlighting job to a a full-time business adventure, I got work lined up. And again, it's not anything I've done. It's just relationships that I've built over
Sure.
the years,
Well, it
partnerships.
is something you've done though, right? It's the way you handled work, your customers, they wanted to work with you.
Yeah. So and it was amazing. It was amazing to see it come together. Yeah, that's basically all I could. It was just amazing. So started to ramp that up. Maybe a week went by, and I got contacted by the executive director of the organization, Friends in Action, and he was just thanking me, for going on the trip. Knew I had to take time off work, and he said he hopes that I can travel with them more in the future. And I'm like, yeah, well, that kind of got a little easier.
Uh,
So yeah, so we had that conversation, and a couple days later, he called me back and he said, "Hey, would you entertain coming to Friends in Action full time as our COO of the U.S. operations?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I have the best of both worlds." I said, "What's the pay look like for something like that?" Brandon, it was complete silence on the phone. I don't know if he fell over or he didn't know what to say, but he's like, "Well, our staff are self-supported missionaries, so you would raise support for your position." And then my side of the phone got quiet. And I was like,
reality check.
yeah, yeah, like how much faith do I have here, Andy? So
I love that.
it took some time. My wife and I had a lot of conversations to kind of let that control go. And yeah, I don't know exact timeline, but a few weeks later, her and I decided that yeah, we're going to try this full
Wow.
time. I'll still run my business full fledged until we get supported to where I can start comfortably start working for Friends in Action, and then we'll hang on to the business and see what that looks like moving forward. So yeah, that's again. There's so many different connections
Yeah.
and things that happen to put it in place, but that's the short side of the story. How I'm sitting in this seat today.
I got a couple things from that beautiful story. Um, so you mentioned early on, I realized I had a skill in 2002 when you went on your first kind of trip, right? So when you're welding, building, constructing in Africa, how much different does that look to what I would like? Because I've never been overseas and done construction, but obviously they would be quite different in the scenario you're in. Welding qualifications? Are we just putting things to get like what does that whole process look like from like a construction project where you're putting up a roof or a structure around something?
Yeah. So honestly, there's not much,
Okay.
Brandon. I don't want to make it sound like it's unsafe either. I mean, when the organization all these years that we've been using welders and other tradesmen, we've always made sure that we've had a skill
Yeah.
level or someone that they can partner with on the team.
Yeah.
So there's always been kind of a check and balance that way. Luckily for myself, so I have my CWI, so I'm familiar with what welds look
Awesome.
like, what metallurgy, what we can do, and things like that. It's all stick welding. We've
Okay.
tried we've tried inner shield like flux core without the gas inner shield welding. Sometimes it works, but when you're out in some of those dry places, man, the wire just bird nests and jams up. And so
Mm.
we've gone to just shielded metal arc stick welding for everything. So again, it's a little bit longer process, just because it's not really productive. But and then the rods too, like you're in the industry, so 7018s are kind of like the rod that needs to be used on structural thing. Well, it's hard to get 7018s unless they've been shipped in or they're real expensive. So
Mm.
you're using a 60 series rod, which sometimes guys don't like to run if they're not used to it, and a lot of out of position welding because you don't have cranes and things most of the time to move stuff around.
Yeah.
So from a consumable side, it can be a little tricky. You do have to have some experience with different consumables. If you need to be decent at stick welding, which I know a lot of guys, if they're MIG welding, they're consider themselves welders. But stick is a true art, and I do. I'd love to, if it wasn't for the inefficiency of man hours, I'd stick weld all day long, man. I love it, and it
You
is.
sound like all of our field guys and none of our shop guys. I shouldn't say none because we have a lot of structural guys that do that kind of thing, but it's way more of a field focus type of approach for welding for us at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so that makes a lot of sense. That was what I would be thinking. Like, certainly more creative and having to think about things on how you're going to put it together because you don't have all the resources, consumables, gases. I'm sure that would be tough to get at some points in time. The weather has to be forever changing, and a little bit volatile in that. Okay. Now, would you be also working with local labor, and did you take up a kind of CM management position to kind of oversee the job as well as work?
Yeah, so that's one of the cool things we get to do is we get to train the nationals most places we go.
That's
Um,
awesome.
so yeah, so a lot of times we'll either bring extra gear to try to train them because what one of the things we try to establish, which a lot of we try to avoid getting kind of the bad rap for being the white American swooping in, taking care of something, and swooping out, and then the nationals are there like, well, what do we do now? And that's not
Yeah.
very supportive of the missionaries. Plus, it's not very supportive to have some sustainability with the nationals. So, yeah, we're very cautious and very studious about trying to teach and trying to pass on what we've brought. And man,
Mm.
there's time and time again, Brandon, we've been places where we learn stuff too. It's
Of
like,
course.
oh wow, you guys really think out of the box to do this, especially when it comes to rigging and moving things. When they don't have equipment, man, they can figure stuff out. So yeah, so we train, and again, I'm just referring to welding because that's what I do, Brandon. But yeah, our carpenters, our electricians, masons that we take on these projects, we always are trying to train the nationals so they have some sustainability. But then it also keeps that relationship growing between the missionary that has to live there every day with them to build that relationship, and to build that
Mm.
security and to really help share the love of Christ.
What would you say to leaders in our industry in this area that say they can't train young kids coming out of school when you're going to a different country, may not even speak the language, and you're
Nope.
teaching people that you're bringing them right to the watering hole? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, I you can't you don't have excuses. I mean, honestly, there are literally some of these guys that I've taught, especially in West Africa. I can't speak their language,
Yeah.
and but they get it, and honestly, it's fun too. But I think the challenge, Brandon, is when we see that we can't train somebody and we're not being efficient, we're not making man hours on somebody right away. It's like, well, I can't spend time training them. Well, fortunately, we don't charge by the man hour or anything for these trips. So we do spend the time. We do have that ability to not have to worry about being overproductive and things like that.
Mm.
So I think that's where it comes into play and again, I'm just as guilty. I manage people too. And when I couldn't teach somebody or our guys couldn't teach somebody, you get frustrated because you see the time clock ticking and you're not getting any billable hours on them.
Nope. Yeah, I get it.
But it can be done, man. These guys. I was just at Pennsylvania College of Technology yesterday, and these welding guys, man, they are anxious. Like they're ready to dig in,
They're
and
hungry.
it's exciting to see. It's exciting to see. So I would say it's difficult. It is. I've been there, but if you can get aside from the loss of billable man hours, again, you'll make up for it. If you can
Yes.
build a culture into them that you want to train them, that you want to spend time, you want to invest in them for the long run, there's no price tag on that, man.
I totally agree. How long are your stints when you go down to these for these situations, or when you're going down to build something or help something out or put a structure up? Like, what does that time frame look like?
Yeah, generally 2 to 3 weeks.
Ah.
And oftentimes we'll do a project where we'll go down a 2 week stint, and then maybe there'll be a week or two where there's no team, and then another team will go down. It depends on the project, but yeah, because of the travel, especially now after COVID, just the travel alone to some of these countries like Vanuatu, Papua New Guinea, it takes so long to get there. So you're spending a day or two, plus you're 15 to 16 hours ahead of your body clock here at home. So there's some adjusting. So we try to make them a little bit longer, so it does have the biggest impact for the time spent there. So yeah, 2 to 3 weeks.
How do you get production friendly, you call them nationals? How do you get that in such a short amount of time to get people to want to work with you, to listen, to try to learn and build something in that amount of time? I mean, that seems extremely fast paced for the hurdles you have.
So one of the things that I've learned is while bringing welding to Africa or South America, it's nothing new. They have it. It's not like oh, the Americans are coming. We've never seen welding or never understood it.
Yeah, fair
It's
point. Yeah.
it's that they see a resource of income if they can learn. And
Mm.
again, I try to caution how I say this, but how they if they can learn the American way. So recently we were in Uganda and we were doing some masonry work and tile work, and they wanted to learn the American way because they could go out and get a job in the city. Because if they learned the American way, they could charge more than if they would do it the way that they've been taught in country. So we've recognized that there's a sustainability when it comes to income. That if they can learn maybe a little bit better or a little bit faster practice, then it's beneficial for them too.
Sure. Okay, so they see tricks of the trade, the best of the best, then it's free school. I just got to pay attention and learn as much as I can while they're here. That's okay, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really not hard to find interested guys in these countries.
Mm, that's brilliant. Okay, well, all of those questions were not on my list, so I just got very excited about that. I do have some bush questions, but we'll get to those later. Uh, mentioned the trip to West Africa in 2021 being a wake up call and everything like that. You talked about how it kind of reshaped life's direction besides the moment where you're not weren't sure where the pay was going to come from. Obviously you just got laid off and you're having that conversation. Was there any other doubt in those situations as you were going through that process? Because that's a huge turn and a huge pivot, and really I want to talk to people who may be looking at making a life change in their own life and like it being terrified to make that leap. What did that whole process like for your family?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a good question, Brandon. So it was scary, man.
Sure.
Especially to kind of shift the income. Like, I mean, honestly, you know how it is. I mean, if you're good at what you do and you're in the trades, man, you can make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And jumping right into it after I got let go, I was making a lot of money, and it just was appealing. I was meeting the customer's need, and honestly, I hooked up with one or two good customers, and they kept me busy all the time. So it's like
Yeah.
I filled a need for them, and it kind of made me feel like, hey, this is kind of nice to be needed, you know.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of faith. Honestly, I had some coaching through that too,
Awesome.
and just understood uh, how to let go of control. And I
Mm.
think finances was a lot of it. And I have a lot of faithful people and a strong church family that helps support us, and it's been great. I think coming from again having a background in the welding industry again was helpful because people knew how to support me because they knew what I was changing to or what I was shifting to. But I had like I said, coaching, mentoring. I had a couple financial mentors too, that kind of held me accountable to make sure that I wasn't doing anything too crazy or
Yeah.
jumping too fast. So
What did coaching and mentoring give to you overall, arching?
confidence,
Ah, that's a good one.
yeah. I mean, I'm telling you, I love having coaching. I love having a
Totally
personal
agree.
coach, and just I mean, I think if you always have that mindset of you can always somebody can always influence you, that's huge. And
Mm.
there's been so many, I mean, so many people spoke into this whole journey with me and for me that it just built my confidence up. Like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I just, my biggest fear, Brandon, I'm not an evangelist. I'm not a preacher. And here I am being blessed to work for a mission organization. But you know what? People spoke into, well, that's not why you're called there. You're not the one out preaching. You're not the one out planting churches. They need you to weld, and that's what you've been
Yeah.
called to do. So,
Yeah, that's
um,
brilliant.
so that's just been it's yeah. I would say confidence was probably the biggest thing that
Mm.
that helped build.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I don't know if until you just said that, I think people would have a hard time wrapping their head around like you're right. It's the cliche, right? Uh, I have to be preaching or I have to be doing this or I have to be doing that or I have to look like this. And you're like, I'm going to help the world build things because that's what we need. That's what some of these
Yeah.
places need. That's absolutely brilliant. As COO of Friends in Action International and still getting time under the welding hood, how do you balance the executive responsibilities with your passion for hands-on?
I was just telling somebody the other day. Sometimes in my head, I feel like I have like a 6-lane highway heading into Boston, Massachusetts. I just got to try to stay in my lanes. But it is tough. Honestly, it is tough to have that balance. Sometimes I pull myself into I'm my own worst enemy.
Mm,
I say yes too much, which means I'm saying no to other things, and sometimes those no's are the executive things that I need to be doing.
gotcha.
Um, so I work directly for our executive director, and he helps keep me in balance. And of course, my best friend and my wife, she tries to keep me balanced too. So it is
That's
tough.
cool.
It is tough. I have a
Mm,
passion for both things. I do enjoy the office side, the executive management, the coaching, the team building here that we have at
yeah.
headquarters. But I love the travel too. So it is tough. I don't know that that'll ever go away.
Mm.
Um, but again, having people speak into my life to say, "Hey, wait, you need to back off here. You need to focus here." I just need to keep myself humble to listen to that advice.
Yeah, it's really good. When, I mean, you already owned a company yourself and you were doing a lot of upfront. I mean, being the owner of a company is a big part of that. Was there any major piece of the COO role, leadership side of things that you struggled with early on that was really hard for you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's a funny question because I get that question a lot because of changing kind of from for profit to nonprofit. Like, what was the hardest change? I think, and I can honestly say this because I've told my staff this. I think one of the hardest things sometimes, and I'm sure church leaders and things like that will tell you the same thing. Man, it's tough to work for a bunch of Christians. It really is. And I mean that in the most loving way, Brandon. But it's like when you're on the shop floor and you get mad, like again, it might not be the best cultural thing to do, but you can just fire somebody. But you know what? Like hit the door. Where and again, I didn't get to that point here. I don't want to be
No,
taken out
no,
of
you're good.
context. But it's different because
Yeah.
people are called into ministry. God's
Mm,
put them in a place here. So it's that was the hardest thing. Like, believe it or not, Brandon, we're not sitting around singing Kumbaya every day.
mm,
So that's the thing. Like again, we have our struggles. We have our conflicts, we have our tension, but man, is it fun. Like we come to resolutions well. We've been as an organization, we've been coached well. We're trying to build into each other. I think from the negative aspect I just spoke about, the positive aspect is we still have one goal in mind, and that's to reach people all around the world. And I think when it all comes back to that, through some of the hard conversations you have to have, the focus, everyone is here for the same focus. It's just getting people on the right seat of the bus and not so much off the bus. Does that make
mm.
sense?
No, it totally does. And as you're saying that, even if, not spiritual, religious person, whatever, I'm thinking that's why people spend so much time on mission statements, values, beliefs inside the company, because it's following the same protocol, right? So if everybody would think twice before they fired someone in the sense of what you're doing, right? Because you just said it's hard to work with Christians, but there's a greater purpose of why they were put there.
Absolutely.
So if you thought, if for your own company, maybe they're just in the wrong seat before you go firing someone. It's along the same lines that if they're there for the same mission, whatever that is for your own personal company, there's a little bit of a recipe or an equation in there. Really, I think it's almost interlocked with how you could really, you just got to find that person's superpower and put them in that right place, or the strength versus weaknesses total concept. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it does. Again, it does go back to mission and purpose. And
Yeah.
even before I was here, Brandon, this organization has an extremely strong mission statement, and everybody knows it. Everybody follows it. It's just that was comforting. And looking back, some of the other companies that I've worked in, we may not have been as good at that, and we should have been.
Mm.
So yeah, again, I don't want my comments to take out of I love I love what I do and love the people I work with, but yeah,
No.
I mean,
Yeah.
we can be difficult to work for sometimes.
Well, no, that transparency is needed because it's not all perfect. And no matter what you're in or what you're working in, it's not. I'm so glad you said you guys have conflict and you have to work through that, right? But you use the mission statement to realign. Because if you guys are pushing for something, it's never going to be just easy and everyone's going to be on the same page. That should never be, or you're not trying hard enough, right? And you guys are doing some really crazy things that have got to be difficult and planned, and you're going to have different opinions no matter what background you're from. So, no, I'm so glad you said that. I didn't take that way at all. And I'm glad that, people need to realize that it doesn't matter if it's for profit or nonprofit. There's conflict, there's opinions, and there's got to be resolution you got to work through. It's
Well,
brilliant.
one of the challenges things, one of the challenging things, sorry, is too we do a lot of remote. We have staff overseas, we have staff internationally here, and you lose that a little bit of that culture when you're doing things remotely. So that's another hurdle that we have to protect ourselves against, is still building time, building relationships into each other, even though we don't, maybe see each other once or twice, a couple times a year. So we have, that's kind of a uphill battle for us too, is just the way
Sure.
our organization is set up.
Yeah, no, it's really good. Yeah, I mean, nobody can complain about remote workers when you're trying to talk to people in, West Africa. That's awesome. You and your wife both can weld,
That's right. Yep.
which is pretty unique. So, how has sharing both your professional skills and your faith journey impacted your relationship?
Well, I go back. I've been blessed by just having her in my life. She's always been on board with me being a welder. I mean, I basically took welding in high school because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was working on a farm,
Mm.
and I figured, well, that was going to be a pretty cool opportunity to be able to help on the farm. Well, that turned, I hooked up with one of the largest fabricators in Pennsylvania, and got a chance to work with them, and that's really what took me into the passion. So she's been around it all the time. She's known it, she's been in my business. She knows what I do. She is just like, honestly, even before she could weld, she was my sidekick in everything.
Yeah.
I've taken her out to job sites where she'll sit in my rig and read a book because she wants to be in what I'm doing. So I cannot complain about that. She'll tell you she's not as good of a welder as that I boost her up to be, but she is. I taught her to weld in 2018 when we went to Vanuatu. I wanted her to be part of that,
Mm.
so went to my shop, spent some time under the hood, and then when we were back there 2 years ago in Vanuatu, she was doing some other things. She didn't weld much, and then last year she was welding again. So, yeah, it's been neat. I just, again, I couldn't ask for a better partner, a better friend, and a better wife, just because she's been everything and see me all through it. And that's why I go back to what I explained earlier. That's why it was so hard when we had that conversation when I got let go. I'm like, I never expected this. Like, I've drug her along with me this whole time, and she's been great. So having her now on board, and honestly, she works here in the office too. She's the finance manager of the organization. So it's been interesting. Her office is on one side of the building, my office is on the other. So people say, well, how do you like working for your spouse? Honestly, there's days where I don't hardly talk to her because we're both doing our own thing. And so it's been from the welding and now into missions. It's been great. It really has.
Do you guys always
The
travel together?
challenge we have though is not taking it home, and we still battle that because my kids are old enough to, like, guys, we don't want to talk about this at the dinner table.
Yeah.
So that's been hard when we're both in it so much. It's been hard to make that break. And we do have our lives besides what we do all day long.
Mm. Yeah, that is hard. I struggle with that as well. I think many people do. Do you guys travel together all the time when you go?
Not all the time. I've
Okay.
gone. I've had the opportunity to go more than she has. So she likes to travel. It's just time constraints, and still having the kids or the young adults at home. It's still a challenge for her to get away every time.
Sure. Do you take vacations outside of these work trips?
We do, we do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good, good. I was
yeah.
hoping you
I
said.
do know the importance of that, and and usually if it's an international one, the kids will go along. Even on, when we travel here in the States, we'll have the kids, but her and I do get away a lot, just ourselves,
Good.
just for a weekend away, just to get out, just to kind of cut communication and things like that. So it's just us. So
For you,
it's important, man. I mean, you're a business owner. I mean, it's like that can take your life over, man.
yeah, I'm not a business owner. I actually work for my wife
Oh,
because
okay.
it was my wife's father. And then she has her sisters and her brother. But no, I'm a 5 to 3 person because I have lots of things I like to do outside of work. And if I can get out by 3, obviously it doesn't work all the time, but that's why I like to go in early because it allows me to get out earlier if I can. But yeah, that balance is really important to me.
Yeah,
Um,
I have a huge amount of respect, man. When I follow you and stuff and see the different things you're into, and I'm like, dude, how are you CEO? And like, I need to learn from you, brother, because man, you like again, I know it's the social media picture that some paint, but
yeah,
no, I think you're honest about it. Like, you're making cool content, dude. You're like talking about all this other stuff. You're gaming, and it's
yeah.
like it's like I need to learn from you, man.
It's well, we have obviously I didn't hire most of the people at SWF, so Al had a really good eye for really good people, and they know how to do their work really, really well, which is a huge plus. And I think once you get to a certain size, it gets into that realm where, the first couple of years I was really in. I was trying to, we were trying to solve a lot of larger problems, and now we got a lot of that worked out. So the next phase is, we're not, we're figuring out what those next phases are. But once you get stuff kind of set in place, they already had a ton of process that was really strong. We were known for quality, so that was really never an issue. I was more looking at, project management philosophies and things like that. Once we got that stuff hammered out, you get it set in stone, and you just have reports that keep you updated. And that's the stuff I like to do. But those are things that once you get them set, you just kind of keep. So now that's why I'm doing culture videos, because like that's
Well,
the next big thing.
well, that's just it. I mean, I see some of the cultural stuff you're doing with your company and the book club and things like that's so cool. It's like I want to implement some of the stuff you're doing, man. And it's like, how do I carve that time out? Like, I'm telling you, man. Like, I've worked for a small company that uh, had an owner similar, probably similar to your age. You guys look very similar. Probably was a competitor of yours at one time, but that's okay. He had a lot of the I, I don't want to overuse the word progressive, but kind of the progressive thinking like you do. Like,
Mm.
dude, we're all in this together. Let's collaborate with other companies. Let's do the cultural piece. The company I worked for back when I got out of high school, Brand, it was like the harder you whip them, the harder you work them, the more they'll learn. Well, okay. I may have learned that way, Brandon, because that's the way I was raised, but not everybody's
Right.
doing it then, and they're definitely not doing it now. So
Mm-mm.
you and him have a lot of the same characteristics. Like, you understand what it is about culture, what it is to invest it. Like, I would say, looking at the companies I've worked for, he's probably invested the most in me as far as coaching,
Mm.
executive management, and things like that. And he didn't know anything about welding.
I
I don't
don't
want to
either.
take
I
it.
can't weld at all.
Yeah. So that's why when I hear your story, I'm like, yeah, that's him. And it's just so cool because to see what you're doing, what he was doing when I was working for him, it's like it's really because that's not the norm, especially in the industry. But in Lancaster County, man, what do you mean
Mm.
I got to be invest in my employees? What do you mean I got to be a cultural fit and I got to work on this? And that's just not the way the steel industry was. But you guys are changing it, man. It's about collaboration, partnerships, like yeah. So it's just cool to see what you're doing with your company.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're not the only ones, and actually, there's I'm trying to do a couple things around that because yeah, I mean, competition's competition. I love competing with people, but like we have probably the most industrial little sector possibly in the United States. Like we got a lot of industry in this area, and we got a lot of really good people who know how to do a lot of this work. And we're close to Baltimore and New York and Philadelphia, and like we are in a sweet little hub, which is why so many people put their manufacturing plants here, or snack food places, or you name it. We got all kinds of shit all over the place.
Yeah, right.
And if we want to keep it here, let's keep the people who want to do this kind of work, and let's keep crushing it. So yeah, the culture piece for me is it seems obvious. I know how I want to be treated, so why wouldn't most people want to be treated? It's just, yeah, like we just closed the book club sign up for the whole company, and we got 29. I was shooting for 70. I was totally over my skis, but 29 I was really actually happy with.
That
And
is
the
awesome.
people,
That is
yeah,
awesome.
I handed out the books today because they came in from Amazon, and people are like, "We're so pumped! Like, can't wait!" So it's gonna be really cool. I can't wait to see what happens.
Which
It's
book are you
it's a
doing?
tough 7 habits of highly effective
Oh,
people.
nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
So it was interesting because I did it with a smaller group, and some of the conversation was like, is this book gonna be? Is this is pretty deep? Some of it's deep stuff, and I said, listen, everybody out there, is going to get something. I guarantee one nugget is what I told everybody when I was selling the book club. I said, you'll get more, but I guarantee you will get one nugget out of this. And even if it's the first, the paradigm stuff, like that's what I want really people to wrap their arms around, is like, the way I'm thinking doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean somebody else is right. There's always different ways to look at the old lady or the young woman right page. I love that page. So
Yeah,
I'm
no,
excited.
for sure. No, that's cool. That and the owner that I was just mentioning, he started a book club too with just the executives, and we started with Extreme Ownership, and that was
Mm,
a good book about teams and working how the military did, and so
yeah.
that's again, it's just one more thing you guys have in common. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, any book recommendations? I'm probably going to try, because it cost me about $300 to buy the books. That I can't get a leadership class for that for 29 people, right? So
Yeah.
this is a very easy way for our team to grow. You learn a shitload about each other because we're meeting every Monday and Friday for 30 minutes.
Oh,
We're
that's
talking about
awesome.
the
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it like live. I'm not just handing out books. Like, we're going to meet and talk about chapters. And I allowed people to just read and listen, and I allowed people to read and participate. So I have two different groups. I'm doing a random name picker, so new six people every Monday or Friday, and we're just going to comb through the book. So, yeah, we'll figure out how it goes. But the first two book clubs went really well. So,
Cool. Cool.
um, having recognized that business is all about relationships and customer service that you've done for a long time, how have you applied lessons from steel industry to your role in ministry or mission work? How have they cross contaminated each other?
Man, that's a loaded question.
Those are the best kind.
One, if it makes sense, maybe I would say perseverance. Like
Ooh.
it goes back to, I didn't graduate knowing how to weld like a professional. I actually got a D my senior year, and I was told I ought to look for a different industry to be in. You know, rest his soul, he's no longer with us, but he told me that. So
Listen, kid. This ain't it.
that's right. So perseverance, and it has like this is the nonprofit side of things, whether it be for faith or not, faith based or not. It's different. It's so
Mm.
perseverance, man, and learning. Like I can't go into this realm of organization and not lean on other people to learn how they've done things. How not? I mean, that's where I'm going to different fundraising banquets and other organization awareness events. Like I need to learn what they're doing, see what they're doing, and learn from it. Like how can I grow from that? So the perseverance is just sticking with it, because again, I think everything that I didn't even share in my story is just this is where I need to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. And whether that's COO role or whether at some point I get to pass this on and I can just travel and weld, with this organization and in this line of work, I know I'm called to be here right now.
How good does
So
that feel?
awesome. I as crazy as my days go and as busy as it gets, and I have the best job in the world. Honestly, I get to do what I love. I get to do it for who I love, and I get to travel the world.
So people go lifetimes without finding that.
Yeah.
To have, I mean, what's the cliche line? Like, find a job you love and you'll never work another day in your life, right? Like, yes, it's going to be hard. Some days it's going to feel like work, but I can feel the passion just from the way you talk about it.
So purpose is huge, and I'm still learning that. I just got done with a book called Invisible Leader, and it talks about what is your purpose and how to find your purpose, how to understand what that looks like, and how to fall in love with it. And he references another book, and I apologize, I can't remember what the other book he mentions is without pulling it off my shelf here, but he mentions a story again. He references another purpose book. He mentions a story about a flagger on the road that turns the slow and
Hmm.
stop sign. And the story goes that this gentleman was trying to get home. It was a Friday afternoon. He's trying to get home. He was back up in traffic. He was frustrated. The whole line of cars behind it was a one lane road. The whole line of cars was frustrated. And the flaggers never get any glory. It's a flagger. Uh, so he pulls up, and I guess he's behind the car in front of him right at the flagger. And I guess the guy asks out the window to the flagman. He says, how did you find such a mundane job? I guess he was stressed because he was in traffic and he wanted to get home. So he said to the guy, how did you find such a mundane job? And the flagger goes, this isn't a mundane job. I have the best job in the world. I have to watch out for the safety of 50 guys ahead of you that they can go home
Mm.
tonight. Plus, I have 100 cars behind you that I have to watch out for their safety. He said, not only is it one of the most important jobs in the world, he said, it's the most gratifying job in the world when everybody goes home after I'm done for the day. So it's like that guy there found his purpose, man. And if you can, not
Mm.
taken lightly, a flagman or any other type of position, but that dude found a flagman found his purpose and the importance of what he does. He's not just turning a sign; he's saving lives.
Perspective. Dang.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's good. Wow, that guy must have been like, well, I'm going to go ahead and shut up.
So it
Oh,
is.
that's
I mean,
good.
again, and if you can help, again, it goes back to the coaching your employees and investing in people. If you can help people understand what that is, they're gonna they're gonna be more committed to work with you. They're going to be more
Mhm.
committed to do a good job. They're going to be more committed to be efficient. And again, you don't want to say you invest in people to get more out of them, but that's the reality of it. If people
It's
find a
efficiency.
purpose,
It's
yeah,
happiness.
yeah. If people find a purpose, stick welding underneath the hood all day long in a steel shop, they're going to be passionate about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love potential. I love finding people's potential and helping them fill that, whatever that looks like. I don't really care. Because I'm into so much different stuff. So I know that there's lots of hobbies out there that people think are weird, but like, let's go for it. Let's find out what it is. Um, yeah, I'm all about that. Whether it's purpose, potential, whatever you want to call it, like everybody should spend as much time as we spend at work doing something they love to do. Otherwise, like, go find it.
Yeah,
What are we doing here?
yeah.
That's good. That's a great story. Do you ever find parallels between welding pieces of metal together and bringing people together through your ministry work? Maybe a strong weld is like a strong community.
Yeah, it can. Where did you come up with that line at,
That
Brandon?
was an that was an AI
I was going to say, did
generated
you
one.
generate that one or something?
The last question, yucky.
Yeah. So I would say it could go both ways. I mean, you can put people together on a team, and again, we've been blessed. Most teams you do have guys that can work well together because that's tough, man.
Hmm.
When you're thousands of miles away and you're stuck with them dudes for 2 weeks. And we all have egos, no matter if we're believers or not. We all got egos, man. We're all a bunch of welders or carpenters or electricians. Well, I don't even want to talk about electricians, but you know what I'm saying here. So we we all got.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of electrician friends, so I can say that. But we all got egos, and now let's just say you're in the bush or you're under huge humidity and it's just hot and miserable and you're trying to weld and things aren't your machine's not running right or your steel might be an odd steel in that country or something just ain't bonding right. Like that can be difficult, man, and you can really rub each other the wrong way. And we've had
Mm.
times like that we've had to bring them together and like guys, like let's recoup, let's just stop and get through this. But then, man, when you have a team, I was just when was that? Earlier this year, I was in West Africa, and we had just by happen chance, we had three professional welders and myself. So we had a team of four, and we've worked together before. One of the guys was new, but the three of us had worked together before, and we were just like clicking, 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 clicking. So those are the times where you're like you're TIG welding stainless, you're stacking dimes, and it's just like. But then you have some of those that it's like you're trying to weld aluminum to steel, and it just don't happen. So yeah, I'll tell you that. And again, I really have had good experiences with teams, but this team I was leading in West Africa, we just was like boom, boom. Like we knew what
Mm.
each other was doing next. We knew what had to be done next. It just goes. And it's like, again, it's kind of like, there's when you get your puddle flowing and
Yeah.
you're just walking the cup, man. And then other times it's tough. You got pinholes, you got porosity, you got fireballs. It's like, but all in all, it does come together. So I guess to answer that question, we have experienced both tough situations,
Sure.
personality wise. And sometimes you're bringing people from all over the country you've never met,
Yeah.
so yeah,
To do
personality
work
wise,
in 2 weeks.
what I'm
That's
sorry.
crazy. I said to do a job in 2 weeks. Like you don't know who you're getting. It's almost like it's so interesting because I used to do a lot of union work when I was in the power plant industry. And same thing. We'd have a job. We had to get it done. You'd call the hall. You're not sure who you'd get. They'd show up and you have to make a team. You make a purpose and you got to finish the job on time, under hours, and it's a schedule date. But like you're doing it in, it can be all kinds of circumstances with all kinds of, variables, whether it be consumables, whether it be the steel, whether it be the weather, whether it be, I mean, you name it. Yeah, that seems, it's just crazy, that you all can come together, and get things done. It just, it's inspiring. It's amazing.
Well, again, I think it goes back to purpose, and we
Yeah.
all know why we're there. We're not there to make money because everybody's got to pay for their trip there. It's like, so we're not there to make money. We spent
Yeah.
money to be there, so why go halfway around the world and be miserable for 2 weeks? So it helps with
Yeah.
the it helps with the attitude sometimes, thinking that way.
What's your leadership style?
Learner leadership, I would say. I mean, I like to learn. I like to learn from the guys that work with me, work for me. I've probably That's probably changed over the years. I think getting out of that, working for that larger company for 10 years when I first started, I think I tried managing that way and it didn't work real well. Do it this way because I said so. So I think I've adapted. I try to do have an open and learner's attitude,
Sure.
because everybody has something to bring to the table. And even if it's not going to be the idea you go with or the method you use or the way you put something together, that person has valuable input. They need to be heard, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's really good. I haven't heard it as learner leadership, but I like that phrase because if people would just realize that you can learn something from everyone, it's why I do this podcast because I love learning from. It's a way of reading books without having to read books for me. And yeah, it's that simple. Like, it just go into every conversation, every relationship with that thought process, and it'll usually go a lot better.
But it's not. See, it is a two-edged sword there, Brandon, because I
Yeah.
get from the for-profit side, and we try to do things efficiently too. Don't get me wrong; we're not just sitting back and letting things happen as they go. I mean, we need to get some things done too because we're limited on
Mm.
our time and resources. But I think again back to, we think too much of a wasted. If we have to hear how, John wants to do it over here, and we're not going to go with his idea anyway, why listen to it? We're wasting man hours. And again, I understand the importance of it. Companies are in it to make money, not to lose money. But
Yeah.
I think that's the mindset that we think about if we let that run too long. On the flip side, the double edged sword is sometimes in nonprofit, we feel that we have to get an opinion from everybody because that's just, we don't have a time clock that we're particularly looking at. So sometimes, and one of the things that we've done is implemented some EOS here,
Hmm.
and just from a meeting side and trying to have those structured. I mean, you know how it is with organizations or businesses. You can really whack out the day with a meeting if you don't keep it pretty tight. So it can be both ways. You can push people through it because you're in a hurry, or you can waste too much time because, again, not that people's input isn't valuable, but too much time can be spent in conversation.
No, I totally agree. I think if your culture's strong enough, people will not have a problem being, I'm going to use the word shut down, but that's not really what I mean. But like, hey, we have to move forward. This is what we're going with. If the culture's strong enough and they know that in other instances they were heard, it's usually not a problem. Right. The problem is if it's constant shutdown, just, it's the nice way of saying do it my way all the time. Like, that's where you have a problem. So there will be times when you will need diversity of thought, inclusion, innovation, all that stuff will come together. And there'll be times when you just got to get work done. But if everybody feels, and I don't like the word safe space, but like, I get it. If you have that, then normally people can blur the lines between those two and be totally cool with it. Is at
Yeah,
least
and and,
what
and
I've
man,
experienced.
I've blown the lines too many times in a bad sense that it was offensive. So again, back to the learner, like what did I learn from that mistake? And being humble to apologize. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out too, man. It's a
Mm.
balance.
Yeah, I mean, that's forever, right? It's one of those continuous improvement things like safety and quality. It's one of the
Oh
things you'll
man,
never stop doing.
absolutely.
um, your steel fab business, your legacy. What's your thoughts around that?
So that maybe that's why I'm holding on to it so long. I don't want to see it dissipate. And
Yeah.
I have such loyal the few customers I have are so loyal, and I don't want to see them abused. But so my son's 18.
Okay.
Great mechanical skills, outstanding intuitiveness, and just understands how to tear things apart and put them back together. And
Mm.
what he doesn't understand, he won't just put it aside. He'll YouTube until he figures it out. And I said, I know everybody says YouTube mechanic, but dude, there's a lot of stuff you can learn on YouTube. So,
It's the only way I know how to change my tractor oil. I'm an idiot when it comes to all that.
so as far as legacy, I mean, he's learned to weld. He doesn't he's not in love with it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I would love to someday say, hey, take over the business. I will teach you and show you the business side of things, the relationship side of things. So he's just not there, and he may never get there, Brandon. No, that's fine. He's actually started his own small gas engine repair, kind of
Nice.
on his own. He's quite the entrepreneur. I could tell you stories. We tell him that he could fall in a pile of manure and come out smelling like roses. I mean, from flipping cars to flipping motorcycles to flipping storage units to small gas engine repair, like it's just
I
he.
I can't imagine where he learned that from.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever. I mean, and he started probably when he was 15. Like, I don't know if I've ever met a 15-year-old entrepreneur, but he really is, and he's a good kid too. So, but again,
Cool.
he's hooked up with a good company, a local company that he can do what he loves, his engines, and he does it well. So, I would love to, Brandon, pass off the actual name of my company to him and the company side of things in the business. He could make a lot of money, but he's making money now. So I don't want to push it. It's important to me that I leave some type of legacy.
Yeah.
Whether that's selfish or not, I don't know, but it's a man thing maybe that I just want a legacy of who I was and how I could help the businesses that I work for. But it might just not be his choice, and I think I'm okay with that.
Hmm. That's really good. Um, yeah, I think legacy is such a loaded word for a lot of people. I'm seeing that a lot for some of the individuals that are coming down home stretch for retirement for the people I get to work with, and that's a big right. It's kind of work defines that generation where there's what am I supposed to do outside of that. So I think it's an interesting conversation I've had with a couple of them because I don't live in that headspace, but it was a very generational thing during that time. Yeah, that's good. Um, so a little bit around like your travel. Can you give me like an example of like probably one of the coolest things that happened on your travel, and then give me one that was like maybe the scariest or something that like totally caught you off guard?
So I think one of the coolest things, I go back to the team that I had in West Africa this year. Again, they've all been really good, but just the way we clicked, just the way we got the work done, some of the nationals that helped us as well, just the relationships built. I think one of the coolest things is seeing them grasp a hold, um, and doing it themselves. And
Mm,
it's just you. And again, it's not what we've done. It's like it's. I mean, they're all what we call God moments, but it's not us. I mean, we were there for a time and purpose, and God used it. But that was one of the cool things. I also have a relationship with some guys in Uganda. Now this is interesting because it's not welding, and I don't want to tell you that I also lay tile pretty well. But so in Uganda, two times in Uganda, I took my hood along and another welder, and the other guy ended up doing all the welding, and I ended up laying the tile. But that again, maybe that's a cool thing because I really got to build relationships with the two or three guys that I was teaching.
cool.
They knew how to do it the way they do it in Uganda, and they do it a lot differently than the way we do it in the States. But they knew, again, back to the one example I shared, they knew that if they learn it the way the U.S. does it, that they'll be able to make more money. So to this day, I mean, that was 3 years ago is when I was there for the first time. And to this day, I mean, he actually WhatsApped me today. So we still talk, we still video chat. It's those connections, I think, Brandon, are the coolest things.
Mm,
Um, they are just excited to be able to have a friend in America. They're just excited to have that relationship. And I know you're probably scratching your head. Well, how the guys in the deep jungles of these countries? I'm telling you, man, everybody's got cell phones and everybody's got the plans work a little differently over there, but everybody's got. Man, I went to this one village in Vanuatu. I don't know if you know where Vanuatu is, but it's
now.
it's in the South Pacific. It's a beautiful tropical island. Well, it's a band of about 80 islands. The area of Vanuatu. The one island we were on, this was back in 2018. One island we were on, we got to travel up to the village, up in the mountain. Awesome experience. My kids were along at the time. They had an awesome experience. But literally, we were there in the jungles, mountaintops of Vanuatu in the South Pacific, and there was a solar panel on the hut with a cord charging their cell phone. So to say that that phones are everywhere, they really are. Now again, there's some areas, but that was just one of the coolest things to see. Is like, wow, they still are connected.
Priorities.
Yeah, yeah. So cool thing I think is just the connections, and
Yeah.
the long-standing relationships I get a chance to build with people, and it's cool for me to say, I can talking to somebody halfway around the world, and it's a whole different time zone where they're at, and so it's a lot of fun. One of the scariest things I think is I got delayed on a domestic flight in Papua New Guinea, and in the one area they're like, well, yeah, you don't want to go outside the airport. Like you want to, you follow these lines, you go in these doors, you go out these doors. Um, Not that I ever felt threatened on any of my trips, but that was probably the first time it's like, oh, like, yeah, I need to really pay attention to my
Mm.
surroundings, be really self-aware. And so that was again, wasn't with my family or anything, but it was still like, that's interesting. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to go there because it can be threatening for an American or for a white person. So,
Yeah.
um, and that's something that I always try to explain to teams when we go is like, you'll see in other airports, some places we go where there's armed military with automatic weapons, like just standing there. Like that's what they do. That's their culture. Like, one, don't take pictures of them.
Yeah.
And two,
Yeah.
like, don't freak out, because it's different in America. It's just the way it is. So that's a little bit of a culture shock right away for some people that never experienced that when they get off the plane and there's a guy with an automatic rifle like greeting them. So, but yeah, that would be probably the most enjoyable. And then one of the scariest is just knowing my place in another country and understanding the
Yeah.
reality of it.
That's cool. Um, what would you go back? What are three things you would tell 21-year-old Andy?
Follow your dreams,
Woo!
take the risk. I, I let me think. 21. I was probably, yeah. So out of high, I probably started moonlighting around when I was 21, 22. And I always wanted to start my own business. I knew it had potential. I just wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to go out. Well, man, I didn't know hardly anything about welding at that time. I thought I was some, whiz kid. I just learned to weld at this big company and man, I can go out and do it. So, it wasn't the time for me to follow my dreams, maybe, unless I had a lot of help along the way. But I look back and think, what would have been different, on the business side of things? Where would I be now? How could I hand off my business now differently if I would have started back then?
Mm.
It really, I mean, follow your dreams sounds so corny, Brandon, but it really is. It really is. That's something. Again, God had me on a different path, and I'm grateful for it. And I look back now and think, yep, this lined up, this lined up, this lined up, and this lined up to be here today.
Mm.
So what would have looked up? I don't regret it, but follow your dreams. Follow your dreams. Take the risk young. Take the risk early. Yeah.
What about a third one?
A third.
A third advice.
Sorry. Third advice would be, find somebody that you can partner with that has a passion like you do.
That's
Because I'm telling
brilliant.
you, the path I took. Now, my wife, and again, she'll admit it. She was the one that told me not to go in business for myself. So we were married when we were 21. We bought our first house a couple months before we were married, renovated it, moved in, we got married, and so we were well on our way. And but she kept saying, "Don't go into business for yourself. Let's just do this. Let's just do this." So. But she was passionate about it. Everything I did, she was passionate about. She was right there with me. I
Mm.
could not have, and I don't mean to like go out through your podcast talking about my wife the whole time, but
No, you're
I
good.
couldn't do it without her, dude. Like she is amazing. And I would say if you're 21, and it could be your best friend too, like find that person that you can learn from because she's taught me so much, who's passionate about maybe not what they like. She sacrificed a lot to be passionate about what I'm passionate about. And I'm grateful for it. So find that person, find that soul, like another cliche, find that soulmate, honestly,
Yeah.
because
Straight up.
it,
Yeah.
it, it, I mean, it was just, we've had an amazing life together and I couldn't have done the things I've done. I couldn't have succeeded without her being part of that.
Yeah, that's really good. Andy, that was amazing. Is there anything you would like to promote or let people know what you're doing? Or is there anything, obviously, maybe with your website or with the website, for the nonprofit or anything you want to promote.
Yeah. So from nonprofit side, from Friends in Action International, we're always looking for
Mm.
skilled trades. I mean, that's why I was yesterday. I was up at Penn College, like I was saying, just talking to students about what your next step is for the future. Are you looking for an internship? Are you looking maybe to put a plug on your resume that said you built a house in another country? So it's just we're always looking for exposure for students, young people, and adults alike to take on these
Yeah.
teams because I've I've yet to find someone come back and say, "Man, that was just miserable. I didn't learn anything. It didn't affect me at all." And whether that's down the religious path or whether it's just down an understanding of, wow, there is so much more than what I see here in the U.S. going on. There's so much more culture. There's so much more passion. People appreciate so much and have so little. And if we can be an avenue to for people to see that, to experience it, to do their trade that they love, to be able to help others, to be able to have that connection with people in another country, it's we're always open to being able to take people on teams. It is we're there for a purpose. We're there to get a job done. We're there to support missionaries, and we're there to build relationships with the nationals. But it's an experience of a lifetime. It really is. It's something. If you've never traveled outside the U.S., if you've never gone to some of the third world countries or deep into the jungles or deserts, I mean, it's an eye opener. It really is, and you come back with a new appreciation. We
Mm.
often say, like when we're working with employers or something, we often say, like, I can almost guarantee your employee will come back with a new perspective on work because they understand. I've seen where they understand that wow, I may think I hate my job, but I have so much more because of my job. I'm be able to provide so much more for my family or for myself, or I'm so blessed. How can I complain about, being under in the heat of the shop or whatever your trade is, or out in the weather or what have you. So we've seen that time and time again where people come back with a new appreciation for what they have and how they've been blessed in one way or another. So we just got finished with our 2025 program for teams next year. We have about 24 trips scheduled,
Nice.
starting in January. We're going to get those posted up on our website here in the next couple of days. Our website is FIAINTL, like Friends in Action International,
Okay.
FIAINTL.org. So you can check out that page. It'll give you a lot of background about who we are and the opportunities we have to travel. Um, that's where I got started. I mean, I was just a welder at a company and working in the shop, and got the opportunity to go. And how many years ago was that? It changed my life, and here I am.
Hmm.
So it's an awesome experience, and you get to help people and do what you love.
I'll make sure to put that link, obviously, in the show notes for the audio, and then also on the YouTube portion. I'll also try to put it in the LinkedIn post on the Tuesday when your episode drops. That was brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you for.
we have a YouTube channel too.
Ooh,
It's okay. That's one of the things we need to get better at. But some of the recent videos on there, I do. I have a couple of them on there that are more recent that really show what we do and the passion we have for it. The ones in Uganda they were done professionally and they're pretty cool.
awesome. Well, Andy, this was enlightening, amazing. We've actually been conversing back and forth for, I don't know, quite a little bit, through LinkedIn for a little bit of time. So I was excited to have you on, excited that you wanted to come on. And yeah, I learned a lot tonight.
No,
So thank you for doing that.
no, I appreciate again just following you here recently. I appreciate what you're doing from the business side too, and just the impact that I see you're making. And again, these are cool. Podcasts are the next cool thing. I mean, they're already taking over, and to
Yeah,
be able to be on yours, a fellow steel guy, whether you feel like you are or not, like you're in it, man. And
I'm in it.
just to the respect I have for what you're trying to do at your company. It's
Thank
really
you.
cool, man. And the relationships that you're building, like I see all the people you're connected with and the relationships you're building in the industry. I mean, it's spot on. So it's been an honor for me to spend the time with you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It's certainly not just me. There's a ton of really cool, awesome people, obviously, that I get to work with every day, and to actually get to make things because I just go out in awe walking through the shop. It's pretty incredible what we're doing right now. But well, thank you for coming on. And yeah, anything else to close?
Nope, that's it. I appreciate your time, man. I really do.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, thanks.